Jackard, welcome to the show. How are you this morning?
Yes, bro. Thank you for having me on, man. I'm very well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, man. It's been, it's getting near the end of the year, so we're recording sort of mid-December. This might not make it out until next year, but it's been a fucking funny old year, mate. How has it been? Before we get into the nitty-gritty of what you do, and it's super interesting, how has the year been for you? So for example, if we'd done this chat January this year, tell me what you would have maybe been saying your year looked like if we talked in January.
Yeah, to be fair, it was going to be probably the best year to date. I'm not going to lie. It was set out. We had a lot of stuff in the pipeline. Had the Boiling Point tour with my boy Low Steppa, so we had that going around the UK. And just loads of parties all lined up, ready to go. So yeah, it's just one of them, and you can't do much about it. But I think all of this, what's happened, it's actually gave me time to focus more on myself as a person. So it's been a blessing and a curse at the same time. So yeah.
Yeah, I think so, and I've definitely found that. And you've obviously, we'll get on to kind of the Defected stuff and everything else. How and we'll get on to how you became part of Will's team, Low Steppa's team.
Yeah.
But what do you think you've done this year that you, instead of talking about things that you didn't do, and we can all talk about those, what did you do this year that's been a big positive that maybe you wouldn't have done if it hadn't been for the circumstances?
Do you know what? I think really getting my head down into production, into the studio, it's gave me the time and the flexibility to just really, crack on with it. Because it was one of the things that I was, to be honest, I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't focusing on it. I was just partying, having a good time with my mates. And then this year, it's just gave me the chance to reevaluate, and then just start learning and obviously making the beats. So.
Nice one, man. We'll get onto that. We'll get onto that in a bit. I want to take you all the way back, right back before Defected, right back before Low Steppa, right back before partying with your mates, right back before pandemics, and just go right the way back to go. What were you hearing musically as a kid, even before you're even choosing what to listen to? What are your parents playing? What's on in the house? What's on in the car? What are those really early musical influences which are kind of coming into your brain without you even being aware of it? Can you remember?
Do you know what? I remember we always used to have a party. I used to live at my nan's house for a bit, and they always used to have a Sunday party. All the neighbours would come round, family, friends, and that. I just remember as a young kid, it was a proper mashup. I think I was only about 7 or 8, but I do remember some of the parties. And they're all always listening to ABBA and, a lot of 80s stuff. I'm trying to think of the band's names now. So yeah, it's a lot of 80s influence, everything from pop to rock, bit of jazz, stuff like that. It was just a mixture. So,
sounds wicked, mate. I mean, the thing is, so many times on this podcast, and even in kind of normal life chatting to people, just hearing about being together with people and listening to music, you're fuck, that sound I'd give anything to go to one of your nana's parties on Sundays. You know what I mean? Having spent so long without music in a social context, anything just sounds fucking great.
Of course, yeah. And when you get older, you start your mom and dad and that start to tell you stories they're actually getting high, smoking weed and stuff like that. I was like, my granddad is such a legend. I was that's exactly what I would have been doing. But it's good times in the past. So I pretty much grew up on all sorts of music.
Can you remember what the first bit of music? Can you remember what the first bit of music that was yours? Now this is, you're younger than me and you're younger some of the guests that I have on here. So this is an interesting question to you, because maybe it wasn't a physical thing for you, maybe it was a digital thing, but can you remember the first piece of music that you chose, bought, you felt like it was yours? Was it physical or was it a digital thing? Was it the first time you got an iPlayer or something like that? Or was it a CD or a record or a tape? Can you remember?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was, I had this CD player in my room. And I remember one Christmas, I got one of the Now CDs. Someone bought me one of the Now CDs, and obviously they have a mixture of like everything on it. And I think after that, I was hooked on all that type of music. And then my first CD I bought myself, I think I was about 10 or 11. It was 50 Cent, Get Rich or Die Trying.
Yeah, I remember the cover so blatantly from that one.
That whole album just sold it for me. I was like, yo, this is so dope, man. This music's tight. And then it stemmed from there, you know. And then it was like Gwen Stefani. I was just buying loads of CDs, all the Now CDs, man. I was just listening to pretty much anything that kind of just, you know, gave enjoyment, you know. So,
mate, which is such a wicked point about.
Started young, and then I think as like, you know, when you start to go to school and then all your mates are listening to different types of music and that, a lot of it was actually quite hip hop orientated when I was younger, and a bit of grime as well. It was just like the people that I was like hanging around with, and then it just like, you know, as it evolves and escalates and you meet new people and hear new sounds and stuff, I think it just snowballed from school. And then
we'll come back. We'll come back to that, because I want to ask you something else, which I think is super important. But I love that point you made, and especially speaking to someone who works in the industry. I mean, everyone that's on this podcast works in the industry, but the point you made about, you know, you just getting a lot of music that gave you enjoyment, and I think like sometimes, maybe it's just me. I'd be interested in your opinion on this. Maybe sometimes we get so caught up in the business side of what we're doing, we forget that that's the true fucking essence of it. Do you know what I mean? Like, we get so caught up in trying to sell tours, or how we look in a photo shoot, or like, you know what I mean? Or what the deal is on the record, what the publishing is, what the promo budget is. And that's all great, because it's all part of our industry. But sometimes we just forget that that's the fucking purpose of music, is to bring people enjoyment.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think as long as you're happy listening to it, and it makes you happy as well, and obviously as you're a DJ, if you're making everyone else happy, isn't that the whole purpose of it all? Whether it's cool music or it's not cool music, you know, long as you're enjoying it, I think that's all that matters, to be honest.
One thing that's come out a lot, and I guess it's an interesting point for you, juxtaposition, because you've just really got into production this year, which we'll talk about, or really had more time to get into it for that point. But one thing that seems to come out time and time again, like in this podcast, like talking to people like Gorp, talking to people like NightFunk, like talking to people like James Hyper, whatever, is like they sort of seem to hit the vein of success with their music when they started to really make stuff that they loved, as opposed to try to make music that they thought they should be making to fit in with a label. What's your take on that? A, as a producer, and B, as someone who works with labels now?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you know when someone's made a song through their own passion, and because like you can hear like the creativity and the sounds and the flow of the tune of the record. It's just like, I feel like it is important. You've got to make what you want, because I hear a lot of people saying, I found my sound and stuff like this. And don't get me wrong, a lot of people have broken through their own sound. But I feel like there's a lot of people out there that are also making, whether it's house, tech house, techno, you know, they're all making all these type of genres, and they're all really good. So I think if you're making something that gets you going and gets you excited and, ready to party, I think that's all that really matters.
Yeah, man, I think that's a dope answer. I'm super happy that you gave that answer. Yeah. I wanted to, so then the next step, I kind of brought you back a little bit, because and as someone who is a little bit younger than a couple of my recent guests anyway, and who's younger than me, this question really intrigues me, like for you, which is like, when was the first point that you became aware of DJs? Like, when's the first point that you became aware that someone's job was to mix and select records in a way that would entertain people? Was it radio? Was it a mate's house? Was it a gig? Like, when was the first time that you really saw a DJ or became aware that was someone's job?
Yeah. Do you know what? I can't actually pinpoint an exact moment in time for it, but I remember the first kind of I used to see, I think it was on BBC Radio 1, like Tim Westwood, you know, DJing for all like the artists and that. And I never really batted an eyelid to it. I just thought, oh, this guy just played a bit of music. And then, you know, I was quite late to the party. And then I started going to all these, like, I think my first ever festival was Creamfields when I was 18.
Yes.
And that just blew my head off. And I was like,
I'm not surprised.
And that was it. It just, everything just kind of blew up from that.
So when did you, so obviously you were talking about, as I think a lot of people do, they start getting, you know, compilations and that was a huge part of, I think, so many DJs' life. Like Nathan C shouted it out on this podcast, and he was like, he could name the version, like the CD that now he had. He could name the tracks that were on it. It was like Gina G and, do you know what I mean? And stuff like that. So I think they were a huge part of everyone's life. And you talk about Creamfields. Can you remember that point where there was maybe not a switch, but can you remember that point when you were opened up to more electronic music, whether it be house, tech, whatever, like your EDM, whatever it was? Can you remember when you were opened up to that more?
Yeah. I think the set that really blew my mind was it was mad to say Tiesto. It was the whole performance, like the light show, everything. I was with like loads of my friends and my family as well. And I think at that point, and then I fell in love with stuff. But the funny thing is, I've always been into kind of like house music and every type of genre. And I used to go to a lot of like, I used to listen to a lot of David Guetta, Afrojack, you know, like the EDM. I used to love that for about a year or two, and I'm not afraid to say it.
No.
For all the house snobs out there. And then I think it was my cousin's 19th birthday, and he was like, "Oh yeah, you should come to you know, the Rainbow venues in Digborough."
Yeah.
That's more. He was like, "Oh, you should come to that." And I think it was my mate's event, Tom Shorter's. I'm sure you've heard of him. And I went in. And then I just fell in love. That was when I fell in love with house music straight away. I think it was the whole. I think Dusky was playing like the proper deep house vibes in like 2014, I think it was. And it was the whole experience. Like walking in, like obviously my cousin was a regular there, so we walk in, be saying hello to everyone. Everyone's on a good vibe. The music's banging, and I fell in love with it right there and then. So that was it.
Where did you see, out of interest, where did you see that Tiesto set?
That was Creamfields.
Was that Creamfields? No,
yeah.
I think it's like, it's just a really valid point, and I'm glad that you said it, and I'm glad that you said, you know, for the kind of house snobs out there, because it was a hugely influential period within in dance music. And a lot of the times there are certain ways which a lot of people become part of our community or become part of the dance music community. And it used to be, a lot of people I speak to, and me included, was back in the day, it was almost bonkers. It was like happy hardcore stuff. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And around the Northeast, like Makina. And it's like, you kind of get into that stuff as a kid. People have got the tapes in the cars, like MCs, all that kind of stuff. And then it just opens the door to different genres that you didn't know before. And that doesn't mean anything's better or worse or right or wrong, but like, it's important that I think you said that, because it opens up so many people to then find even more stuff, which is what's great about our scene.
Yeah, that is you've hit the nail on the head with that one, because like I've pretty gone through every genre, and that's because of like, as I've got older and I've met different people, and people have been hanging around listening to different stuff like dubstep. That was massive at one point, you know, like DJ, I forgot his name now, Rusko or something, and everything was popping at the time. I'm pretty sure it's like that in different generations. So yeah, it's I think it's just an evolution of, you know, you listening to different stuff, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, and I think it was Scott Diaz made like a really good point when we were talking about that time, and he was saying that like, but you can't forget that people like Alesso and Afrojack and Guetta, the music they were putting out, regardless of like how we look back and see it, you know, musically, if you will, but the quality of it was phenomenal. You know what I mean? And Scott Diaz was saying like that shit Alesso was putting out was like, can't make that like on one little laptop in your house. Like that's proper big fucking studio shit. You know, like creating soundscapes, like to create music that sounds good on those Creamfields main stages and those Tomorrowland's main stages. Like it's not easy, regardless of how we look back on it. Like the sonics of it were pretty good.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. They haven't knocked that up in Ableton in a day.
On a pair of headphones on a train. No, that's definitely not the sketch. So you went to the Rainbow thing and you saw Dusky and stuff.
Yeah.
Where does your journey? Obviously, you know that's your journey as a fan, as a clubber. Do you know what I mean? We talked about Creamfields. Where does your journey as a DJ begin, or where does your journey within the industry begin? Like, obviously, you saw that Dusky show. Something dropped in your mind. What sort of happened from you going forward from there?
Yeah. I think from then on, obviously, I fell in love with it, and then I started to go to all the events. And I was my main biggest influences as DJs to get into what I was doing now was like Chris Lorenzo. Obviously, my boy Low Steppa. It's mad to say I was watching him before I even met him properly. I mean, Asian Dance, Hannah Wants. You know, it was all that like deep house, Jacking house, you know, G house kind of vibe, and I fell in love with it then. And I was raving for a couple of years, and I got to like network and know people, and then one thing led to another. And I remember I was going to a gig with Low Steppa, and you'll probably, if you listen to this, you'll probably laugh. And my mate was driving me and him. And then he was like, yo, Jack, you should become a DJ. Like, you look the part, you can mix, can't you? And I was like, yeah, I'm all right. Like, I've been doing a bedroom DJ set for about a couple of years now. I got my own decks probably when I was like 21. And then I was like, yeah, why don't I just give it a go, you know? And then I got my first set. I think it was, where was it? It was in Wolverhampton, just down the road from me. And then, obviously, first set on, no one's in the club, you know, playing to no one. And I was probably playing beats that are a little bit too hard for a warm-up set because I was so oblivious to it, you know. and then yeah, I think things just snowballed from there, really. And then I started getting different gigs because I was just networking, talking to people, just being a genuine down-to-earth geezer. It doesn't get you anywhere if you're playing up. But I think things just started to happen.
Nice one, man. I want to take you back because there's a couple of things that I've not asked you probably correctly, or things I'd like to know anyway. So decks-wise, you said you got some decks when you were 21.
Yeah.
What was your route into the equipment side of things? Like, what decks did you get? How, did you get CDJs? Did you get a controller? Did you instantly start on CDs, or were you on USBs? Like, what was your journey into DJing?
I think I was with my friends, and it was a point where we were deep into raving every weekend, and he was like, "Yo, we should get some decks," because my mate at the time, he's still my mate now, he's one of my best mates, but he was like, "Oh yeah, we should get these RXs, you know, the Pioneer RX controllers." He was like, "Everyone's got these," and I was like, "Right, do you want to go twos on them?" So we paid half the bill each month, and then he taught me how to DJ basically. So after about 6 weeks, 2 months, you know, I thought I could, you know, do a half decent mix without almost messing too much up. And then just practicing, we used to just go around his house on a Friday night and just mix for hours, you know, and getting drunk and stuff. And then, yeah, it was at that time where it was really innocent, you know, we didn't really think about doing it
business,
just for a bit of fun with your mates, really. And then
it's something I've rediscovered, like, well, not with my mates, but it's something I've rediscovered this year because I got my 1210s like set up and everything else, but it hadn't really been touched for years, really. I was DJing out like 3 nights a week, pretty much on average, like for the last, 10, 15 years or something. So to be honest, like, you know, I'm not saying I don't need any more practice, but I was sort of servicing my practice requirements. And if I had, you know, if I wanted to learn a new skill, or if I'd seen a DJ do something and I was like, I would sort of just be practicing it on the fly while I was in the club, like, you know what I mean? And it's something that probably even guilty of making. If I needed a promo mix, I was probably guilty of making that in Ableton, like, you know what I mean? Just so I could do it quickly and use time when I was traveling or whatever. And this year, with the downtime and with not actually DJing out, something I've rediscovered is the joy of having a mix. Do you know what I mean? Like on a Friday night or whatever, or just going downstairs and pulling out some old tracks and having a mix, which sounds ridiculous to say as a, you know, whatever professional DJ, but because I was doing it so much in a work capacity, I'd sort of stopped doing it as much. I don't know if that's the same for a lot of other DJs, but I definitely have rediscovered the joy of just having a mix.
Do you know what? I totally agree with you as well, because it's almost, sometimes I feel like there's almost pressure to perform, but when you're doing it, you know, on your own, mixing whatever you want, when you want, you know, I think you rediscover that feeling of putting different tracks in with each other and, you know, just having to play around. And I think it is good for the soul, man. It really is.
I found it weird because I've spent so many years DJing with my head up, like so many years playing a record and then trying to gauge the reaction of the record that I've just played, and then trying to work out which record and 2 and 3 and 4, or even the direction of the set. Like I've spent so long like DJing like that, like looking up, trying to gauge the reaction of a record and then try to work out where I want to take it and whether I want to pitch it up and try and get the energy going, whether I want to try and level it out because I know what's going on, or if it's a warm up, I'm trying to get it into a certain place for a DJ. And then like the first time in, you know, going back to March or April, the first time that I was like, I'm just going to go for a fucking mix. Do you know what I mean? I found it weird because I was like almost looking up. It was just a wall I was looking at, and I was like, what should I play next? It was like such an alien concept in my mind that I was like waiting to get to gauge a reaction to know what to pull next. And suddenly I was, because even if you're making a promo mix, you know what station it's for, you know that you've got a track to promote, you know that, you know what I mean? Or you try to promote your mates because they're also like got records out. So even just having that mix for the first time in years, the freedom of just picking out something, I was like, oh no, I want to hear that now. Like I'll just play something I want to hear, which is weird.
Yeah. I totally agree, mate. I totally agree.
So how did you meet? The other thing you mentioned there was going to obviously, like Low Steppa mentioned that, you know, you should give DJing a go, and we'll come back to that. How did you get to the point of knowing, like, meeting Will, who's Low Steppa? Like, because I know that I've got mates now who used to come to the club, and then eventually they kind of will come into the side of the booth, and then they were like chatting to me, and then eventually I was like, mate, just come in the booth and have a drink. And then like years later, we're now like pals. Do you know what I mean? So from your perspective, how did that happen with Low Steppa? How did you meet him? How did you become pals?
Do you know what it was? It was one of my friends met him at a festival in Amsterdam. And because we're all from the same area, my mate was like, "Oh yeah, we're from down the road from you, etc., etc." And then my mate was in really good shape. He was a personal trainer, and my mate Steppa was like, "You should personal train me. I want to get into shape." So my mate started personal training him, and then my mate started going to a couple of gigs with him because obviously we're into the music and stuff. And then my mate was like, "Do you want to come to V Festival with us? Like, do you want to come out for the day?" Obviously Steppa's playing. I was like, yeah, I'd really love to. And this was like, I think it was 2016. So I've been out in the scene for a couple of years. And I was like, yeah, wicked, let's do it. And then that was it. Just hit it off from there. And then obviously just become friends. And then, yeah, things just, you know, organically become what they are now. So
nice one, man. And we'll come on to that. I wanted to ask you a little bit, because every time you mention it, I just kind of takes me back to some of my misspent youth, and also makes me just feel jealous that we can't be doing that shit this weekend. Tell me a little bit about those first forays into that kind of, like, I take it was a sort of midlands scene. Like, what were some of the first clubs that you were going to? What were some of the first artists that you were seeing at that time? Like, just give us a little kind of overview of that. You know, you keep mentioning it every time you mention it. I'm like, oh, it sounds so good. Those, you know, you like two years of raving, 2 years of clubbing. Like, just give us a little overview of some of that, you know, that time stamp. Like, what clubs were you going to? Shout them out. What artists were you seeing? Shout them out. That kind of thing.
Yeah. I think the main club was Rainbow. Like, that was the place to go. And every week there'd always be something popping, like loads of different types of genres, like whether it was tech or deep house or jacking. And yeah, like I said, I was going to events. It was a lot of cause and effect, like Chris Lorenzo, Hannah Wants, Low Steppa, Ari Nation Dance, Tom Shorters, for example. And all them types of events. I went to Glass, Lab 11, loads. That's like my second home now. But yeah, trying to think where else. Void, which was the monastery.
Yeah.
That was a bit more of an underground kind of, you know, like deep tech, minimal type of vibe as well. And funnily enough, I actually really started playing out my first sets was that type of music. It wasn't really. So yeah, that's kind of where it all just it snowballed from. And then obviously when you go to these events, you meet different people, and then you hear about different events, and you go and try them out. And then yeah, I just
did you do much traveling? Like, did it was a big thing? Like when I was younger, like, I mean, we didn't live in the Midlands, to be fair, when it was such a big scene. But we used to go, you know, we used to go to Nation at Cream, we used to go out of London to Ministry, we used to go up to the Arches at Colours. Like, did you do much traveling to, you know, I mean, I'm keeping you within this sort of little 2 year period before, like, the Low Steppa stuff, but like, did you do much traveling at that point, or was it just so much going on in and around Birmingham that you had enough events to go to there? Do
you know what? We did travel a bit, but I didn't travel too much because, to be honest, I was broke. Like, I had a dead job. I was spending all my money at the weekends. Yeah, I think we went to Manchester, London a couple of times. Where do we go? Ministry of Sound in London. Went up to Manchester. Went to Warehouse Projects when I was a couple of times. But apart from that,
I think that's when you say apart from that, I think that's pretty fucking solid list, to be honest. Yeah. So DJ wise, I missed you. You cut out just for the tiniest of seconds when we were talking about this. You said so what sound were you playing out when you first got these gigs? You said your first gig, I think, was in Wolverhampton. What sort of sound were you playing out?
It was more kind of deep tech, minimal kind of vibes. Yeah. And that was just the kind of the event that I got thrown into. And then started to play that, and then I got a few gigs off the back of that. For the same event, and then for a different event, and then, you know, you just started to get different opportunities. People hear of you, and then obviously when like, you know this firsthand, when you get booked for a certain night or a certain gig, you kind of research like the artists that they've had and the vibe that they're playing, so you can kind of, you know, blend it in. So you're not going to turn up and play a house set at a techno night. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it was kind of just a mixture of things, but I did start off mainly quite deep and minimal, really.
Cool. How did you then progress? I take it the next step was to be working more and more with Low Steppa within his label and stuff like that. Was that kind of the next step, or did you start running parties? What was the next step after getting those first few DJ bookings as your brand and your name is getting out there more? What was the next step in the industry?
Do you know what? I think the next part of that was when at the time I was obviously friends with Steppa, and then he decided to start his own party called Boiling Point.
That's right.
And he was like, I want you to warm up. And I was like, yeah, can't wait, man, let's do it. And then it was at our home club, Lab 11, because I think Rainbow closed at this point. And yeah, that was it. I played my first proper house warm-up set. And then, yeah, it went really well. And then everything just kind of went from there, really.
I think they have some of my like favourite types of sets, those house warm-up sets. Like, we all love the kind of, we all love the spotlight. We all love the headline set or whatever. But there's something so lovely about not feeling the pressure. There's something, I love being the person who presses play when there's no one in the club. Do you know what I mean? Especially if there's a queue outside the club. Do you know what I mean? Though, like, and I've thought about this so much more in the last 9 months than I used to think about it. But those nights when it's like, it's either sold out or it's going to be busy. There's a doorman's like comes up and you're stood in the booth and there's no one really around, maybe a couple of pals. And the doorman's like, look, we've got to get open. There's people outside. And you're in that buzz of excitement and the sort of like the hair standing up on your neck. You might even sneak out to like, used to be able to do it when you can do this in digital. You go to the balcony and you could see the club forming and you could see the queue forming, and you could see you could hear the excitement and the fucking buzz in the air. And I used to love being like the person who would like press play on that first track. And, those house warm-ups where you just kind of get to put it in a groove and you sit there and you're not too worried about like the dance floor. Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously you want to entertain people, but the pressure of coming on at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. and knowing that you've got to just hit it from the fucking off. There's something lovely about that, like groovy house warm-up. So like they must have been wicked sets at Boiling Point.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, do you know what? I really do love doing a warm-up set. Like, it is something, it's an art as well, because you're playing at the start to no one, and it's the best feeling when the club's empty and then a couple of people come into the room, they got their drinks on, right, and then a couple more come in and everyone's had a few more drinks, and then suddenly the dance floor's full. And you've got the party going, and it's a nice feeling getting everyone, excited for the night ahead. Really, that's your job, in it, just to get everyone ready to go properly. So
yeah, and you can always have I'm probably infamous for this in digital, but then you can have you can get loose as fuck when you're finished. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like it's you're done. Like, I posted something the other day, which was like the weekend just gone, like last year. I did a warm up for Chris Lake and Salado. And it was just wicked. It was like, I did the first 2 hours, then Lakey was on. And then like, by the time like the Salado boys got there, I was having the time of my life. I was flying. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So it was like, and whereas I'm awful, like I see some people, I get really envious of like these DJs. Like, I'm rubbish before I'm playing, like, especially if it's a late one. Like if I'm starting at 1 or 2, or if you're at Ministry starting at 4, I'm just shit crack. I don't, I'm anxious a little bit. I'm in my own head thinking about what I'm going to start with. I'm trying to listen to what the guy before me is playing to make sure I'm kind of getting in the right vibe. I'm like watching the crowd. So like something, which is great about that warm up thing. It's just like, you take your headphones out. Do you know what I mean? You high five them or whatever. And then you just like,
It's like, do you know what? I'm really bad for that, because I still love to party and enjoy my night. So it's almost a perfect excuse for me to do the warm up, because I'm like, I'll do it, and I've got the whole night to enjoy it then. So I'm terrible for that as well, mate.
So tell us a little bit about the Boiling Point brand. Tell us a little bit about the idea behind it, the ethos behind it that Low Steppa and yourself have created. Tell us a little bit about some of the favourite gigs that you've done on the tours. Just give us a bit of, we'll come on to the label and stuff, but give us a little Boiling Point kind of synopsis.
Yeah, I think he was just at the point in his career where he was right. He's obviously playing all these good parties and doing the headline, slots and stuff. And then I think he was like, why don't I just, do a party for everything around like my sound and the vibes that I want to give out to everyone. So I think he was just like, right, let's just do it. And obviously he started the brand. I think the debut show was in Birmingham at Lab 11, which I played, and then I think the first year we did that, and then we did Manchester in Gorilla, and both sold out, and it was absolutely it was so good, because everyone's there for just that type of music. So everyone's going to be really focused and enjoying that night, really, because when you've got events where there's a couple of different rooms and people are floating in and out and they're kind of just mixing and matching. This was like all focus is on, straight ahead, and that was it, head down, hands up kind of thing. It was mint. It was really good. And then it was going to be the second year this year, so we had like Village Underground in London planned. I missed out on the one at Newcastle.
That's right. World of Quads. I think, did Louis play that one?
Louis Dunmore. Yeah. So he played that, and then we had obviously like Manchester, Birmingham, and then somewhere else I can't remember. But yeah, it was going to be a really big year as well this year. So yeah,
I think that Newcastle show was right around when I had Louis on the podcast because I think because we were trying to book him, or we did book him, but we were trying to get him a date sorted for our little party just outside Newcastle. And in the end, I think lockdown got announced on the Friday night when we had Louis booked for the show on the Saturday. But I think we tried to book him for like a couple of weeks earlier, and he was doing the show with Low Steppa, and I'm sure it was just around the time that I spoke to him because it was a wicked podcast. So shout out to Louis, he's a top guy. Tell us a little bit about your connection with the kind of Simma Black family. Like, what do you do as part of that family? Like, just tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. So I think it was just like, because obviously I was friends with Will and Wes, it was just like we got to the point now where we need someone to do the socials basically because we're too busy. And I was like, well, I'm always on bloody social media, so I was like, you know, I'll do it, whatever. I'll help you out. And then it just kind of went from there. Started doing all the socials for them, and do a bit of A&R here and there, and then. Yeah, it was just to help out your mates, really.
So let's get into. I mean, shout out to my boy Alex Preston, who's just been on the show recently. He's had a release on Simma Black real recently, and Ryan S, who I'm doing a couple of tracks with, he's on that one as well. But if people don't know, because all kinds of people listen to this podcast, so if people don't know, shout out what it is, what it kind of like, what sort of tracks they put out there, what sort of artists are on the label. Even shout out some of the social handles so people can check out your fine work. Just tell us a little bit about what the label is and what it embodies.
Yeah, so Simma Black is straightforward, proper house music. It originally started as jacking kind of deep house vibes, but you know, that is the original sound, a bit of UKG inspired, you know, deep house vibes, but it is just proper good sounding house music, really. You know, whether it's a club track or whether you listen to it on Spotify or on your run or whatever, you know, it's that type of label. It's pretty diverse. We've had tech on it. We've had almost a little bit of like bass house kind of vibes. You know, it does range. It's not one of those labels where it's got you got that certain type of hi hat on it. You can't be signed to it. It's you know. It's pretty diverse, you know. It is good, but it's originally all proper. Just it's good house music, man. That's how I could describe it. So
shout out the socials so people can check out your work before I ask you about it.
Yeah, it's just Simma Black on everything. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, SoundCloud. You know, just check it out, Simma Black, and that's it.
We'll come on to the Defected like connection in a minute. But as far as Simma Black goes, are you just putting out videos of the track, or like what's your thought process as someone who's managing the socials for a label? Because again, part of this podcast, my idea when I first started it was to dig deeper behind a lot of people, because as punters, sometimes you only see a DJ. Do you know what I mean? We only see the image that we want to project, but so many people in the industry do so much behind the scenes that we're not always aware of. So some people might not have been aware that you ran socials for labels. So talk us through a little bit about, you know, what you're thinking about when you're creating content. What are you trying to do? Just talk us through a little bit about what's going through your mind when you're doing stuff for socials for a label.
Yeah, I think you know, it's got to attract people's attention, right? So, because you know what you're like with your attention span, you just flick up and down. So it's you know, it's got to grab your attention, right? And I think half the time the music does that anyway. If you got your phone on loud and you hear something cool, you're gonna watch it, right? But I think, you know, something that's engaging, something that's, you know, easy to watch and nice to watch. You know, I think people, obviously it's called social media, so people like to engage, you know. So obviously comment back and, you know, reply to people, and, you know, you got to make it a little bit more personal. I think that really does help. Not feeling like the people on the other side of the channel a million miles away. You know, you got to make it feel like it's a community, right? So I think that's important, man. I really do.
Cool. And obviously you sort of mentioned Wes, who works for Defected, and you obviously mentioned Low Steppa a lot. So, you know, congratulations on getting this gig working for D4 which is the new Defected sub-label, or, you know, or however they want to refer to it as. What are the differences between running the socials for something like Simma Black and the differences between running something for D4? Like, A, what are the differences with the sort of content that you might look to put out? And B, is there a difference? Like, do you have to, because in the world of social media, and I would touch on this a little bit, sometimes you have to react quickly. Do you know what I mean? Like, sometimes there's a trend. Like, obviously I've run socials for clubs, for my own brands, for different brands. Sometimes you just need to try and jump on something quick. Do you know what I mean? To get that early reaction before it's sort of, because we know what it's like, especially in our industry, and we'll be the same with our feeds. We follow so many people, and so much of the same stuff gets shared by so many people. With Defected, like, do you have to run stuff past people before you can post it? Do you have the freedom to jump on something and just do it? And again, what are the differences between the content that you're looking to put out for, say, Simma Black and D4?
Do you know what? I think in terms of the difference between the both labels, I think it's the sheer size of Defected, you know, because when I started doing Simma Black, it was I kind of got the ropes pretty quickly, and I was left to kind of just do my own thing and, you know, advance on things myself, and build it up through my own kind of, you know, creativity and stuff like that. And I was given all that freedom to do so. And I was watching obviously what other people were doing, so I'd look at labels that are doing better than us and go, what are they doing that we're not doing? And then obviously when I started doing bits for D4, it was obviously just a bigger team. So obviously I've got guys from Defected, because it's a sub-label. I'm talking to them and then learning from them how they do things on their channel. And it's just a process of learning how other people do stuff, and I'm learning every day. And it's just stuff just gets better and better, because, you know, you're putting out more stuff, more engaging content, which is what you want. So basically on social media, the more people engage with it, whether they're sharing it to their mates, they're saving it to their phone, that's going to get a better reach, basically, because more people are liking it. So that's pretty much what it boils down to.
And it all comes to that A word, doesn't it? It all comes back down to the algorithm.
Illuminati,
the Illuminati, the A that rules us all. Cool, man. Well, let's come back to your stuff. I mean, let's talk about you getting into production and furthering that production. There might be some people out there who are listening who are thinking, oh, it'd be wicked if I could get into production. Like, talk me through your journey. Like, talk me through, like, what was the first bit of software that you opened up and decided to use? What were you trying to do? Did you do any online courses? Did you get any tutoring from anyone? Explain it in a way that if someone's out there listening going, fuck, I'd really like to get into it in the next, you know, in 2021, tell them about your journey.
Do you know what? It's pretty simple. I researched the best doors to use, software to use. And funnily enough, I didn't choose the two top ones. I chose what my mate was using. It's called Cubase.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you've heard of it, but there's probably a lot of people that don't know about it. And I taught myself. I just started to play around with things. Obviously, when you've been DJing for a while, you kind of, you know, you got the basic concepts of like the kick, the clap, the snare, the hi-hats, etc. And I just started trying to make some grooves, and then it just kind of snowballed from there, because I know the sounds that I like, and then started to watch stuff on YouTube, as you do. And I'm all self-taught. I didn't get any lessons or anything. I've sat in a few sessions with really good artists, but I've never actually, you know, like kind of collaborated with them. I was just sitting there while they were finishing up some bits and that. So yeah, like it was just a process of learning, really, for me, because I thought if you don't teach yourself now and go all guns blazing into it, you're never going to do it, because there's so much to learn, and it's a massive learning curve, as you know, mate. It's like there's so much information out there. and you just got to kind of figure out what works for you. And I'm learning every day. I'm just, my software, I'm still getting used to it after a year. It's one of them. I think it's going to be a long kind of process to get to where I want to be. But in terms of like what I've been doing for about a year, like I'm really happy with how it's going. So,
and I think the last thing I saw of yours was it called Sexy Groove?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit, because I really love that, man. So tell us a little bit about that record.
So that was when I think that was when lockdown first hit, right? And we had all this time in the world. And I was like, right, what am I going to do with myself? And I think it was really sunny. It was really nice weather. Like, we had really blessed weather in, like, I think it was March, April time. And I was just sitting there on my Mac trying to make some beats. And I was like, let's make a really nice summer tune, with some nice synths and stuff. And I found these vocals. And it was just sexy, man. I just love sexy house music. It's what I do. So it just sounded nice. Everything just come together really well. And it was something that didn't take long. When something just naturally just happens, and it was one of them. Just thought, right, this is cool. I'll put it out there.
Nice one. It's funny because exactly the same thing you said. I think it was probably around April time, and I remember having this really great weather, which is weird for April or whatever. We're in lockdown, and it was like I remember like getting this old disco tune out that I've always loved, and I was playing around with this disco tune, and I made a bit of a kind of really basic kind of edit on Ableton of something that I could just play out. Obviously, I didn't know how I was going to play it, but I was like, something that I could play with. And then I was like, oh, it'd be really cool to do something with a bit of this sample. So I started chopping it up, finding little bits that I liked. And then, I hit Maitland up, and I was like, because I'd worked with Maitland on everything. And I was like, Mark, I want to come in and like work on this tune. So we got in there and we started mucking about with this sample, and we started putting some more drums to it. And then we were like, oh, it'd be cool if we didn't use the vocal. We got like an original vocal for it. So like got like these two vocalists called the Melody Men, who were women. I don't know what their names were, Melody Men, but so got them to do a vocal for it. But what my point of the story is like, we would just pretty much, and then I kind of like hit my mate up Lefti, who was on the podcast as well. And I was like, oh, I've got this half idea, but I'm not sure where I'm going with it. What do you think? And he was like, give me some pointers. And then I was just like, dude, do you want to just jump on it and do some guitar for it or something? Because he's like a stupidly talented musician. And we were just, the point of the story is though, it began on a really sunny day in April. And we were just pretty much finishing it yesterday, like in the studio. And my point is like the day that it started, I was like, I want to make something fun and happy and like disco-y. And like, as I walked out the studio at about 5:20, it was like driving rain, pitch black. And I was like, I started this on a sunny day. And like now we're making disco in the pitch black. Obviously there's no windows in the studio, but yeah, it's cool. It's got a nice disco groove. But just when you said that, it was just funny how it started on a sunny day in April, but it was sort of wrapped up on a fucking cold, rainy day in December. But just how it goes, really. So what are you looking at now? Like we're like you say, we're mid-December. What is 2021 looking like for you as far as what are you hoping to do DJ wise? And what are you hoping to achieve through Boiling Point, Simma, D4 Dance? What are some of the things that you've got as goals, and what's your vision for next year?
Yeah, I think I just want to, in terms of myself, I just want to grow as a person, whether it's like my music quality in the studio. It would be cool to get some tunes out, but you know what? I'm not in a rush, to like, I know there's a lot of people out there. I'm not going to drop any names because I'm not that type of person, but I feel like people are trying to make music really quickly and release just to stay relevant. Yeah. And I think that's not a bad thing, but it's also, you got to make sure your music's right and it's at a certain quality, right? So I think just going to see how it goes in terms of that, and see where we're at next year. And I think in terms of the parties, I just want to play really full. I just want to play a party basically. That's it.
Just get me out of the house.
Yeah. No. Hopefully go to IB for if it's going to be open and that. I was looking to do a season at some point, out there. Whether it be next year or year after or whatever, we'll see what happens. So just kind of playing it by ear with all that kind of stuff. And yeah, in terms of like business and socials with like the labels, it's, you know, we just got to keep putting out quality records and pushing that as well. Obviously, getting it to the right DJs and artists and radio stations, and yeah, just growing the brand as best we can. So
nice one, man. I think you make a super valid point about the rushing the music thing, and it's something that I admit I've only learned in the last year or two. Like, I was definitely part of that. Make a record, get a record out, shout about a record, start making another record, get a record out, shout about a record. I was definitely on that rush train. Like, and the one thing that I've learned, it's sage advice from you, and one thing that I would pass on from my experiences, like, especially the last year, which is, you know, this year, like, take your time, because one good record is better than 5 like fine records. And the other thing, I mean, again, the other thing I've really learned is to live with records a little bit. Like, I used to be super guilty of working on an idea, taking it to Maitland, like saying that it was finished, getting out the studio at like 6 o'clock on a Thursday night, herring home, and then like opening my laptop and sending it to every fucking A&R and DJ that I could bother with it. And then like what would irrevocably happen is, like, on the Saturday, I'd play it in the club or something and go, oh, that bit's a bit shit, or like, we need that to be shorter, or like, and like the one bit of advice I would give is like, live with your records a bit. Like, if you think it's finished, don't listen to it for a week and then come back to it and listen to it again. And if you still think it's finished, then great. But very rarely does that happen for me. Like, if I leave something for a week, almost always I'm like, oh, I just want to tweak that little bit. Or maybe let's try something here. And like this record that I'm doing with Ryan at the minute, I was pretty much like 3 weeks ago, I was like, that's done, mate. That is nailed. We've killed that. And then lived with it, worked on some of our ideas, sat and listened to it like 3 days ago. And I was like, that just needs some textures. It just needs a couple of little bits of like ear candy here and there. It just needs a little bit of depth there. And we spent like 5 hours on it yesterday, and suddenly it sounds like a fucking different record again. I just think it's phenomenally sage advice from you, have a little bit more patience with your records. Don't rush it out, like, for the sake of a social media post.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think going back to not rushing it as well is like, I talked to a lot of people that have been there and done it. So I've got, like, you know, advice from like mentors, if you want to say that, you know, telling me, you know, all these like bits of advice that not a lot of people get to hear. And I'm guilty as you, mate. I'll make a beat. I'll be like, yo, this is so
this is sick. This is it. I've killed it.
Yeah, gotta send it to everyone and see what they say. And then come back to it a week later and you go, hang on, this sounds dead. Because it's all fresh in your ears. You're like, okay, this is new. I like this. And then you come back to it and you're like, oh yeah, I could have done a lot better on that. So
it's because you've been listening to it on loop. You've been listening to like 4 bars or 16 bars on loop for 6 hours, and it just imprints on your brain that it's the greatest fucking thing ever. And then you have like a week of listening to other stuff and you go, what?
Yeah. And listen to like an Armin van Helden track and like, hang on, my shit.
Who was I talking to about that? I think it might have been Siege the other day. I've got a couple to drop before yours. And we were like, we're talking about Dennis Ferrer. And we were just like, I was like, oh mate, don't mention Dennis Ferrer. I was like, we wrote this track and thought it sounded great. Then we stuck a Dennis Ferrer record on. We're just like, all right, fuck, let's go for it. We're like, fuck. Cool, man. Well, I want to do some things to start to wrap it up. But before we do, hit me with your socials. If people want to find out more about you, your music, check out what you're doing, hit us with some of those, man.
Yeah, straightforward, man. It's Jackard music on everything across the board. So Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud, Mixcloud. I've all made it really easy for everyone. So Jackard's music, and yeah, you'll find me all on there.
You're one of those people I'm envious of who got to like create their socials with like a fucking depth of knowledge about social media, because you're just fucking like younger than me, and B, you were clever enough to realize that you've got to brand yourself across every platform the same. Yeah. Like, and because also when you did it, all the platforms existed, whereas like when I was doing them as they were coming along and wasn't thinking about it, so like mine are just all fucking all over the place. Yeah. So yeah, I'm envious of that simplicity. I'm gonna hit you with some quick fire questions. You don't have to answer with one word or anything, but they're just some cool things to like, what part of the thing I like to do to finish. So let's just say COVID's fucked off completely. We're back to normal parties. We're back to crowds. We're back to all that. Don't know when it is. We're not getting into that, but we just got this weekend. It's all fine. It's all good. You know, safety's cool. All that bullshit out the window. You can go and do a party. Let's just say it's a boiling point party. Let's just say you can pick. I'm not going to put more words in your mouth, but let's say it's a boiling point or something. What's the first record you're going to play back after COVID? What's the first record you want to drop in a club? So it doesn't have to be a warm-up set. You could be playing later or whatever. But what's the first record you just like, yes, that is the fucking track I'm going to play first in a club again after COVID?
Oh, I don't know, man. But I think one of my favourite 90s tracks at the moment is Grandpa Sound of Music. You got it. Do you know that one?
Yeah.
It's I could just dance to that all day.
Cool. Let's go for that. Let's just say as well, again, all is fine again this weekend, tonight, tomorrow. You're back, but because it's my podcast, I get to set the rules. You've got to do a back-to-back. Who's your dream back-to-back with? Literally, you can pick anyone you want, dead or alive. But tonight or tomorrow night, in a non-COVID world, you're going to do a back-to-back set with them. Who is that artist?
How many back-to-backs is it?
I'm giving you. Normally it's one, but it's your answer, so you can do what you want.
Do you know what? I don't have one because I've got too many artists that I absolutely love. Do you know what? It'd probably just be the whole Defected crew on a massive. Yeah, a
massive Defected back to back. Has there been, and you've mentioned a couple of them, but I would like you to shout it out again. Has there been almost one single party that you can name as the most influential party that you went to and it really changed your life and opened your eyes?
It's got to be 1031, so big up to Shorters and Willpower and all that in Birmingham, man. Changed my life, that. So yeah, that was
nice one. Track, we're going to just roll on from the party question into a track. Is there a track that has influenced you the most? Like, is there a track that has influenced your DJing, has influenced your production? Like, is there a track that you just would never get sick of listening to, always come back to, have taken a lot of inspiration from? Is there a record like that?
It's difficult to say, but I think the one tune that does stick into my head when I first kind of kicked off partying and DJing and stuff, it was Edge and Dance Lost.
Yeah.
Proper deep house vibe like that. I remember listening to that, I think it was at Hideout Festival in the sun, and it just blew my mind. So I love that one.
Nice one, man. Going to take you back to that same question, and you might just drop what is the obvious answer, but I'm going to still ask you the question. Again, COVID's gone. Maybe it's next summer. You get an email or a text through or something, and you've got a gig and you're going to warm up for someone. Just as we were saying before, that lovely self-indulgent feeling of being able to play like a really cool, groovy set that you know exactly what you want to play. You're not going to have to tailor it to anything. You're just going to get to play exactly what you want. And then this DJ is going to come on after you, and you just know that you can unplug your headphones and just get loose. You're either going to be in the booth watching them, or you're going to be on the floor having the time of your life. Who's the DJ?
Oh, do you know what? It's probably quite stereotypical for a lot of people out there, but probably Jamie Jones, man. From Harry.
Nice.
It'd be cool, man. It would
nice,
be cool.
Man. Well, I'm down with that. Okay, I'm going to try and frame. This is the last of the quick fiery questions. I'm going to try and frame this on some of your answers from the chat. It's back in March. Maybe it's that Friday night when Big Boris announced the lockdown. Let's just say, I don't know if you've ever done this, but let's go with me here. Let's just say you are finishing, you're closing, you're on after Low Steppa, one of the Boiling Point parties at that club. What's the club in Birmingham that you said was kind of your home when you did the first one there?
Lab 11.
Yeah, so you're in Lab 11, you're closing, everyone in there, it's packed, everyone in there knows that we're going into lockdown as of when this club closes. So, and you now have the benefit of hindsight to know that we're still fucking in December and, you know, no records being played in Lab 11 again. What's the last track that you play knowing that this is going to be the last track in a club for a while?
Strings of Life.
Boom. Take that.
Life,
okay.
Yeah.
Gonna give you now, Jackard, I want you to curate a dream gig. So basically, you're going to have to give me a venue. It can be a venue that you know, like Lab 11. It can be a generic thing, like a main stage festival. It can be, you know, a basement club. Be whatever you want it to be, but we need a venue. And then we're going to get 3 acts. It's not so much a warm-up, a middle, and a headline. It's more just like, you know, 3 acts are on. It can be anything you want. It can be back-to-backs. It can be DJ sets. You can play. You can not play. It can be bands. It can be whatever the fuck you want it to be. It's just in this moment right now, it's just your dream gig that you're curating. So, Jackard, where's it going to be?
It's going to be... it's going to be in LA.
Nice.
On the beach.
Nice. Who's playing?
We're gonna have Oasis.
Yeah.
We're gonna have me.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna have Justin Bieber as well.
Nice, mate. That is one of the more eclectic dream gigs, but I'm still fucking loving it. Nice one. Right, mate, this is the last thing I'm going to ask you to do. On the audio version, this is going to play out with a track that you're about to choose, and I will link it in the YouTube version. So we've been chatting for an hour. It's been wicked. I've really enjoyed it. But I want you to choose a track to play out. So people are listening. We've heard our chat. And I want you to choose a record that it's going to play out the podcast. Introduce it. It can be something of yours. It can be something old. It can be something new. It can be something you heard yesterday. It can be something from back in the day. It can be whatever the fuck you want. It's just a little bit of musical ear candy to play out the podcast. I'd like you to introduce the record and tell people why they should listen and check it out.
Oh, put me on the spot here now. Let me just think. I'm going to pick D4 D4NCE, new one, Low Steppa with Keeping It Heel and Michael Walls on the remix, fresh out on D4 D4NCE. So yeah,
nice one, man. Couple of local northeast guys as well, which is wicked on the remix.
Oh yeah, so
nice, man. Well, thank you for taking the time to chat. I've really loved it, and I'll catch you soon, man. Hopefully, after the COVID's fucked off, I'll catch you in Ibiza or something.
Yeah, man. Big love for having me on the show, bro. I really appreciate it, and it's been dope to talk to you, man. So yeah, thank you very much.